So the U.S. Supreme Court, in its infinite wisdom, they've decided to let the federal officials, Federal Border Patrol, cut the state of Texas's razor wire, their concertina wire that's located down at the waterfront, at the riverfront. Even though it was working. I was there this past weekend. I was there in Eagle Pass from January 17th through the 20th, took a whole bunch of footage, and there were virtually no illegal immigrants coming across the river because it's become so difficult to make that river crossing and then get through the wire, get all tangled up. It's just, it's just terrible. But no, the Supreme Court has said, no, since that's not federal wire and a federal border, you guys got to cut that, got to get it out of there. Let's get into it. Here we go. All right, so this is footage. I put my cell phone or my GoPro in through the big border wall that's gating Shelby Park in Eagle Pass, Texas. And this is what you're looking at on the actual border. They've got no intrar signs here. And this is the concertina wire. They've got like 30 miles of this wire up and down the border at just Eagle Pass. I think there's 1,254 miles of border between Texas and Mexico. So this is U.S. soil right here. This is cartel land. Cartel runs, thousands. They've literally run hundreds of thousands of people over the years through this area. This is one of the hottest areas Eagle Pass was. And that's why I wanted to get down there and take some footage. But there wasn't a whole lot going on at Eagle Pass. This direction is north over to the right here. There's more crossings being pushed there because they don't have as much of the pushback from, Governor Greg Abbott, who's basically taking control of a city-owned park. And he's basically said, yeah, we're going to make it as hard as we can because this is a siege. This shouldn't be happening. Here's Border Patrol. They just kind of roam around. No, actually, that's not Border Patrol. Border Patrol is not allowed in this park. That is another thing that the Supreme Court is going to be making a ruling on. Instead, you've got Texas National Guard actually doing the job that they're supposed to do. Now, Border Patrol wants to do that job as well, but because they're a federal entity and Biden is basically, bring as many in as you can, there'll be voters down the road for us. You've got this scenario where 302,000 people have come through, illegal immigrants have come through the southern border in the month of December alone. 22,000 people came through this area right here, Eagle Pass. That was the week before Christmas. 22,000 people in 1 week in a community of 28,000 people. And then you had over 4,000 people coming through this area right here on December 20th. That is a crap ton of people. And that's why Governor Abbott of Texas said, no more. And he loaded up the concertina wire. Okay, let's stop here. This is Shelby Park. This is where the feds have been booted out. And Greg Abbott is he's just taking control. And this park is in play with the Supreme Court. So what the Supreme Court has ruled, here's your concertina wire. And you can't really tell down here, but it's literally, these folks make this crossing, and that is a harrowing crossing. You might have heard about the 3 drownings, and they claim they happened up here at the boat ramp. They didn't happen at the boat ramp. These guys right here, they're all over this section because this is a city park that's just been overrun with illegals. They'll come across in, huge holding hands across the river and swimming if they need to. And that's what happened in the most recent drowning. But I've done other videos where I've talked about that drowning, and there's no way it happened the way the feds say it did. It just didn't happen. So in this park here, you have got Texas National Guard, Texas Department of Public Safety. You've got Texas Military Department. You've got state troopers arresting folks. And all of this is I was over on the Mexico side and there was nobody around. There were certainly no daytime crossings. Now, there were crossings that happened kind of early evening or early morning, and Texas state troopers were arresting people and sending them to jail. They're not welcoming them in like the Border Patrol was there. And so now Border Patrol has the rights for the Supreme Court to go in and cut this concertina wire, cut this razor wire, because Texas put it up to defend the border because the feds were basically just acting as a chaperone to get people, when they come over to here, to get people literally to walk into the park. And then they put them on a white van, and then they put them on a little van ride a couple miles up the road. They go to a migrant center, which is all closed off because nobody wants to see what we're doing with all these illegals. And then they get shipped by bus. And I had a couple of buses at my hotel. They were just waiting, and one of them left while I was there. They must have had enough at the migrant centers to make this go. But so that's kind of a little bit of a background there on what we're actually talking about. Let's read the article. Let's get into the article. So at the heart of this matter is the fact that Texas on the border doesn't have the authority to do that. But Texas Governor Greg Abbott said, well, if you guys aren't going to do it, we're going to take care of it. We're going to have National Guard take care of it. And they did. And so, I think if the Supreme Court went down to the border and looked around and ran the numbers like I just did for you, I think there'd be a little bit of a different thing. But you've got a bunch of folks that are like, the poor immigrants, we just need to help them out. You've got to have a policy for your border. And we don't have one right now that's certainly not working. We've got one that's in place, but it's like, bring as many in as you can. This should all work out just fine. And then you've got Let's Go Brandon Johnson in Chicago. This isn't working out. That whole sanctuary city thing. We're going to have to rework that. In a divided decision, the U.S. Supreme Court has given its approval for Border Patrol agents to resume cutting the razor wire that Texas had installed along a section of the U.S. Mexico border. This issue has become the focal point of a growing dispute between the Biden administration and the state of Texas regarding immigration enforcement. So the recent drowning that happened on January 12th, Texas took over the park, Shelby Park, on January 10th. Wednesday, January 12th, 3 migrants died, a mom and 2 kids. The feds are trying to weaponize that, saying, well, if we were allowed into the park and allowed access to the boat ramp, those people wouldn't have drowned. The drowning happened an hour before Federal Border Patrol alerted the park, hey, this is going on. And it probably happened on the Mexico side. Nobody really knows because the U.S. side didn't really address it because it wasn't out there. It physically wasn't happening out there the way that the feds have said it has. So when somebody says, well, what about those drownings? Those drownings happened an hour before anybody said anything to the U.S. side. An hour. They were already dead. They've been dead for a long time. The 5-4 vote has now cleared the way for Border Patrol agents to remove concertina wire that Texas has placed along the banks of the Rio Grande in an attempt to deter unauthorized migrants from entering the United States. I would say it's working. Now, other things that are actually helping out the situation with having way fewer illegals come across are that Mexico is doing its job. It is rounding up people that have come through, made that huge trek through 7 countries and all the way through Mexico on La Bestia, the train system that runs people up, the cargo trains. They get to northern end of Mexico, and Mexico is turning them back and actually deporting them to southern Mexico. So when Mexico steps up and does its thing on top of what Greg Abbott is doing, to me, it's working. The numbers are way down. Whether this is the calm before the storm, who knows? Whether this is just the cartel trying to figure out, all right, where are we going to move our crossings to? Because when you look at what kind of territory this is that they're running people through, you can see in my videos what they're looking at. It's literally just a river, and they're trying to make a crossing over the shallow spots. And you go further out from Shelby Park, you're into some areas that are minimal population. All you've got are ranchers and farmers to basically, hey, there's a bunch of illegals coming over. They can't do much about it. And sheriffs in that area, they're spread so thin geographically. The sharp wire has caused injuries to some migrants, and the Justice Department has argued that it hinders the government's ability to patrol the border effectively. Is 22,000 people coming across the border in this area the week before Christmas? Is that patrolling the border effectively? And, the cartel is saying, hey, if you got some medical conditions that the minute you get over into the U.S., if you want to go to the hospital like Johnny on the spot because you got something really wrong with you, cut yourself up. Give yourself a good cutting with that concertina wire because they will immediately take you to the hospital, medical, whatever. That's what they're saying. That's what they're doing. That's strong advice because if you got a medical need, you're in the country's willing to take care of you. This is kind of how it works now, right? And so they're saying that it doesn't allow the feds to patrol the border effectively, including providing assistance to migrants in need. Well, Texas is taking care of that. Texas is doing that job. So, yeah, border patrols need not apply. I watched Border Patrol go up to the main gates and they would talk and they would say something and then they'd get the F out of Dodge because they can't go into the park. They just can't go into the park. Texas is saying no. So you've got this big, huge standoff, and the concertina wire is a big part of it. Is Border Patrol really going to go in and cut it all up? I don't know. While some of the justices provided explanations for their votes, the one-page order can be seen as a victory for the Biden administration. This is deemed a victory, allowing more people to come across the border. That is deemed a victory. Is that a victory to you? You got a border to secure, and this is how you're handling it? I mean, to me, it makes no sense at all. But it's a turf issue, right? And the interesting thing about this one is Shelby Park is owned by the city of Eagle Pass, but the state can come in and commandeer it with an executive order, and that's what Greg Abbott did. And he said, hey, yeah, we're not allowing anybody in here who isn't helping secure the border. And he was saying that pointedly to the feds. So allowing them to proceed with their lawsuit against Texas concerning the razor wire. Texas Governor Greg Abbott had authorized the installation of the wire as part of several aggressive measures aimed at curbing illegal border crossings from Mexico. Now, where I shot that video downriver, probably a mile and a half, is the big 1,000-foot section of floating barricade. It's this huge round orange barricade that they take almost like a backhoe and install it. They got these backhoes out in the middle of the river, right? And they're installing just this enormous 1,000-foot long floating barricade. It's at a point in the river where tons of people have gone through, and it's supposed to be very effective. But that is, again, the state of Texas doing the Lord's work because nobody else is, especially not the Fed Border Patrol, because from the top down, Border Patrol, I think all in all wants to do their job. But because higher ups have said, nah, this is what we're doing. We're just, we're going to bring these people in and then we're going to parole them. Parole is the term they use once they do a little screening and they let them loose with a work permit. And then for their citizenship, come back and check into a court date in 2031. Oh, most of those dates are not going to be met, right? Because you got just illegals just running all over. We don't know who they are, what they're doing, what kind of background they have. But you send 8-10 million people through the border, you're going to have some people that have been up to shenanigans back home, wherever that is, right? And those shenanigans sometimes include murder, the R word. Yeah, you got some bad people coming through. Just on a percentage basis, you're just going to when you have that many people. I'm not saying the vast majority of these folks are. I think the vast majority of these are people looking for economic opportunity and a way to better their lives. And if you and I were in the same boat, we would probably do the same thing. We'd, battle it out to try and get a new life for our kids, for our family, whatever. But there's got to be a working order to this. And we do not have this right now. And Greg Abbott, governor of Texas, he's like, well, nobody else is going to do it. I'm going to step up, just like he has with the buses. Send that bus to Chicago, that one. You want to go to New York City? All right, here's a bus. The absence of such deterrence, according to the governor's office, encourages migrants to take risky routes and complicates the work of Texas border personnel. The White House has welcomed the Supreme Court's order stating that Texas actions, including placing razor wire near the border, make the jobs of border personnel much more difficult and dangerous. Well, only if they get caught up in it themselves and they got to work with the illegal immigrants coming across. but it also prevents a lot of those folks from making the crossing there, right? You could argue that it's a whack-a-mole situation, and where they're putting up razor wire here is just downriver a little bit. Just it's this nutty, crazy situation. And you can check out my video. By the way, if you're enjoying this content, love to have you a subscriber. Hit that like button for this video. Hit the notification bell. I drop 2 of these a day, Monday through Friday, and 1 on Saturday, 1 on Sunday. Back to our regularly scheduled program. The concertina wire spans approximately 30 miles near the border city of Eagle Pass, where recent tensions have escalated. The Texas Military Department has taken control of a city-owned park in Eagle Pass, Shelby Park, and restricted access to the Border Patrol agents and everybody else. I had little kids that were playing in the street. They were like, what's the old white man doing? Walking around with the camera and with a cell phone talking to himself. And I was shooting footage. And, I kind of asked them, is this your park? And they go, yeah, we'd like to play in this park. I'm like, yeah, you can't play in it right now. And they just kind of looked at me. But press is not allowed in there unless you have an appointment to go through, and then you can get some footage. But nobody's allowed in there. The only people that are allowed into Shelby Park area, south of the bridge, the international bridge there, are golfers, because there's a golf course there. So while all this is going on, are we cutting up the concertina wire? What are we doing here? You got golfers. Or the river is right there. It's this surreal, just bizarre kind of deal. Park has become a hot spot for unauthorized border crossings, leading to frustration from Governor Abbott, who accuses federal agents of loading migrants onto buses after they cross through Eagle Pass. That is exactly what they do. It's kind of like when Peter Ducey, told Karine Jean-Pierre, they're walking across the border and then, they're literally walking into the country. And she's like, that's not happening, Peter. No. That is happening. Literally, that's happening. But she hadn't covered that topic enough to even know what the southern border would look like, because nobody on the Democrat side wants to go down there. They're like, no, thanks. I understand it's bad, but no, we've got Kamala Harris, the border czar. How did that work out? Did she ever go there? And her reason was, well, I haven't been to Europe either. Like, there's some fine governance going on here. Abbott has also authorized the installation of floating barriers in the Rio Grande and allowed troopers to arrest and detain thousands of migrants on trespassing charges. That's what he's doing. And to me, getting down there relative to the numbers that we were seeing in December, just a few weeks later, some of this stuff is starting to work. Now, a lot of it has to do with the migratory patterns and people in, South America, Central America, and even as far as away as China, telling folks, hey, it's go time. It's go time. And they go in these big, huge groups and you get these migratory patterns. Right now, I think we're in a little bit of a lull period because we had literally 302,000 illegal immigrants go across the border in December. In just December. It's mind-boggling because when you see this area, it's not that big. The administration argues that the wire obstructs Border Patrol's agents from reaching migrants as they cross the river, and that federal immigration law supersedes Texas efforts to control migrant flows. Well, if you call bringing 8 or 10 million people into the U.S. of A. Controlling the migrant flow, you're controlling it in and you're accelerating it. That's what you're doing. Border Patrol has literally, their task has been, hey, let's get these people in. Let's get them in. And, our senior guy, he thinks that they're going to vote for, they're going to vote Democrat. So that's one of the big reasons why this is happening. Plus that whole, let's get rid of borders everywhere. And we'll just see how that goes. That coincided with the whole Black Lives Matter and, defunding the police and abolition of the justice system, abolition of borders, except for CHOP, where they immediately put up a border. This is our land over here. You can't come in here. This is CHOP, the Capitol Hill Occupy protest. Texas officials, on the other hand, countered that federal agents have cut the wire to assist groups crossing illegally through the river before processing them. Yeah, it's harder if you have to actually help them through the concertina wire, which prevents them from coming in. Yeah, so we need to cut that up and just allow millions more to come in, I guess. I mean, that's what the Supreme Court is saying. Supreme Court's decision is part of ongoing legal battle over immigration enforcement at the Texas-Mexico border, with both the state and federal government taking contentious actions to contentious assert their positions. I don't think this goes anywhere else. Yeah, that's it. So the concertina wire Supreme Court decision on that's one thing. You've got the floating barricades down the road. I don't know, the boxcars. Did the feds put the boxcars? Because you can see along the perimeter that you saw in that one video, you got literally boxcars lining the riverbanks because there's been so many people that have come in that they have to have a deterrent that large. And on top of the boxcar, you can see in a bunch of my video, you can see razor concertina wire on top of the boxcar and then just loaded up in front of the boxcar out to the riverbank. It's got to be terribly difficult to navigate that, especially when you come out and the water is cold. I felt the water. That is some cold ass water. You do not want to be swimming in that river. I mean, it's cold. So you come out, you've just made the crossing. You've been thinking about this for years, probably. You're frozen. You're cold. That's because, the river, you're not supposed to be in there. And you get to the other side and then you get hung up in wire and you're hypothermic and you cut yourself. Yeah, it's a disaster, but you got to have some pushback. And this is the best thing that Texas came up with. And I, physically looking at it myself, it's working. I wouldn't want to go do that. I mean, just no. Try and bring my family through that? No. And the cartel knows that as well. So the cartel is right now, they're sending drones over. Yeah, drones, and then Border Patrol sends drones over doing recon on the cartels because the cartels run all the smugglers for this big deal. Meanwhile, Greg Abbott's literally got Operation Lone Star, a military operation going to try and protect the borders in Texas. Man, how's this all going to end up? I don't know. It's a wild, wild story, though, that's unfolding. And it means the difference between millions more people coming in or coming in a more, controlled manner, which we can figure out who's okay, who's the decent hombres and who are the bad hombres. Yeah. All right. That's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. I'll catch up with you in the next one. Bye for now.